Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a deep, objective look at a guy who is, without a doubt, one of the most talked about and powerful figures on the global stage, Vladimir Putin. We're going to trace the literal timeline of his life, mapping this incredible journey from profound poverty all the way to the absolute pinnacle of global power. And look, our goal today isn't to judge, but to really understand the forces, the history, and the mindset that shaped his worldview and, by extension, modern geopolitics.
Okay, let's dive into this. To really understand the man today, you've got to look at the extremes of his life. Take this quote, for example. It perfectly captures his calculating, disciplined approach to power. It's a massive contrast from where he started. I mean, he wasn't born into political royalty, not even close. He was born into a crowded post-war Soviet communal flat. The distance between that flat and the global stage, it's huge. And tracing that path reveals exactly how his mindset was forged.
So here's the game plan for our geopolitical briefing today. We're going to trace his journey starting from the forge of his early years through his time in the shadows of the KGB, his rapid ascent, the consolidation of his power, his moves in the global arena, and finally, the legacy he's building. All right, let's start with part one, the forge, from poverty to judo.
To really wrap our heads around this journey, we have to set the scene. Imagine it's October 1952. Leningrad is still reeling from the absolute horrors of World War II. Young Putin grew up right here in a communal flat. That meant his family shared a single kitchen and just one bathroom with multiple other families. Think about that for a second. No privacy, waiting in line just to use the toilet, the air always thick with the smells of everyone else's meals. Now compare that to the immense wealth we associate with him today. We're talking reported multi-million-dollar watch collections, private jets, palaces. The gap between those two realities is just staggering. So how on earth did he begin to bridge that massive gap? Well, the answer actually starts with the number 12. As a kid, Putin was small, skinny, and a pretty frequent target for the neighborhood bullies. But instead of hiding away, at age 12, he took up judo and sambo. That's a Russian martial art. And he didn't just learn to fight. He forged an intense, ironclad discipline. He eventually earned a black belt and developed this reliance on staying perfectly calm and thinking clearly in incredibly tough, high-pressure situations. And honestly, that's a trait he still leans on to this very day.
Moving on to part two, the shadows, the KGB intelligence officer.
You know, while other kids were dreaming of being doctors or astronauts, Putin actually dreamed of being a spy. And he calculated the exact steps to get there. Knowing that the KGB recruited law students, he focused relentlessly on his grades, got into Leningrad State University, and just kept his head down to demonstrate a really sharp, disciplined mind. And you know what? That calculation paid off big time in 1975 when he officially joined the KGB. His career eventually took him to East Germany, right in the middle of the incredibly tense Cold War. He was working quietly, strictly behind the scenes. Out there, he wasn't just gathering intelligence. He was perfecting his German and learning how to navigate a deeply, deeply divided world. He was basically absorbing these masterclasses in patience and observation, skills that would absolutely become the bedrock of his future leadership.
Which brings us to part three, the ascent, his strategic rise to power.
As you know, the world changed virtually overnight in 1989. When the Berlin Wall fell and the Soviet Union started to weaken, Putin pivoted back to a rapidly changing Russia. And this brilliantly illustrates his breakneck speed to power. Just look at this timeline. In a single decade, he goes from being a KGB officer in 1989 to moving to Moscow in 1996, all the way to acting president on the very first day of the year 2000. It's wild.
So you're probably wondering, how did he climb the ladder that fast? Well, he built a really strategic reputation as a highly loyal problem solver. Working first in St. Petersburg and then later in Moscow, he was known for being quiet but extremely effective. So when an ailing President Boris Yeltsin desperately needed a reliable successor to manage a struggling country, Putin's reputation for calm, behind-the-scenes problem-solving made him the perfect, trusted choice.
Now let's look at part four, the consolidation, rebuilding the Russian state.
Taking over in 2000, Putin inherited a country that was in deep, deep crisis. We're talking a weak economy and rampant corruption everywhere. Believing that strict authority was literally the only way to prevent total chaos, he enacted a massive transformation. Before his presidency, the state was starved. Nobody was paying taxes, and it was largely controlled by these incredibly wealthy oligarchs. But under his administration, He leveraged Russia's immense oil and gas wealth to centralize power, he poured money into modernizing the military with advanced tech, and he basically made it crystal clear that the state was supreme. He managed to achieve this through a very sequential, albeit controversial, playbook. First step, he aligned the major television networks with the government to shape public opinion and maintain stability. Step 2, he took direct action against the oligarchs, basically forcing them to submit to the government or get out. And Step 3, he relentlessly modernized the military. In the end, he transformed a fragile, fragmented state into a highly centralized, absolute power structure. Moving to Part 5, the global arena, his vision for global influence.
Once Russia was stabilized internally, Putin shifted his focus outward to challenge Western dominance. So the crucial point here is understanding his ultimate foreign policy vision, the multipolar world. He fundamentally opposes the idea of a globe dominated by a single Western superpower. Instead, he wants a system where power is distributed, giving smaller nations a voice and, most importantly, allowing Russia to negotiate on entirely equal terms.
To actually build this multipolar reality, he strategically created the Eurasian Economic Union, or the EAU. By uniting countries like Belarus, Kazakhstan, and Armenia into this powerful economic bloc, his aim is to offer a direct alternative to Western institutions. This strategy solidifies Russian influence across Central Asia and really reduces their dependence on Western trade.
And his multifaceted approach to global power is just relentless. He balances these massive alliances by strengthening ties with China and India. He projects power in the Middle East by supporting leaders in Syria. He's also investing heavily in cyber technology and skilled hackers, which lets him exert global influence without deploying a single soldier. And of course, very controversially, he took bold action by annexing Crimea in 2014, a move driven by his desire to protect perceived Russian interests at absolutely any cost.
Finally, Part 6, the legacy, a complex, enduring era. After more than 2 decades in power, a huge part of a footprint he's leaving behind is tied directly to his personal traits and a very carefully calculated strongman image. He maintains this super strict physical routine, quail eggs, cottage cheese, daily swimming, and that discipline feeds right into these highly planned media images of him riding horses, exploring shipwrecks, and practicing judo on the mat. It's a continuous, deliberate broadcast to the world. The leader of Russia is active, he's fearless, and he is incredibly strong. But look, it's about way more than just physical strength. It's deeply tied to national identity. He intensely focuses on reviving Russian pride. He brought back massive military parades. He champions the protection of traditional values alongside the Russian Orthodox Church, and he pushes back really hard against Western ideologies. He genuinely operates on the belief that a deep connection to Russian history is literally the only way to secure its future.
So, drawing from all the sources we've explored today, his playbook really boils down to a few distinct lessons. First, there's this intense focus on strict adaptability in the face of crisis. Second, a relentless commitment to long-term strategy and calculation. Third, a willingness to stand by deeply unpopular decisions just to maintain authority. And fourth, the understanding that sustaining long-term power requires investing in domestic innovation, education, and people. He's managed to navigate economic crises, political isolation, and immense global pressure by constantly adapting to stay relevant. But as we reflect on this iron path, from a crowded Leningrad communal flat to the absolute heights of geopolitical dominance, we're left to wonder, has he fundamentally rewired the global system? Will his strategic vision for a multipolar world endure permanently, long after his time in power comes to an end? Well, thank you so much for exploring this explainer with me today. Keep asking those big questions, and as always, keep seeking to understand the forces shaping our world.